Hey, what's up, y'all? Here we are in episode 3 of the Siren song. Before I even get started, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Patrick and Lewis Riverman, both of whom gave me some feedback on the last episode, just some general tips on what they thought I could improve with the coaster. So I appreciate that, guys. What I decided to do was to just start over from the beginning. So this whole episode, I'm just going to rebuild the whole track. It's going to retain basically the same layout. The only difference is that I'm smoothing out some of the transitions and making a few minor changes here and there. And the main problem I had with this ride was the way I had done the transitions. They were really rapid. At first, I thought that's what I wanted, but they were just a little bit too robotic and metronomic almost. So I decided to make it a little bit smoother, give it a little bit more flow, because in my mind that went with the overall theme of this ride. Better. It went with the name better because obviously we're at the seaside, and although this isn't really themed to a sea serpent, I wanted it to kind of have that feel. So I wanted the flow of the ride to just be a little bit smoother. So what you can see here is I started from the very beginning, and I kept the old version, this is something I've been saying since I started this Let's Play FVD series, is to always do version control. It's very easy to do. When you go into the main screen, you can click add, and from FVD track, and you can just import the same track you just did and rename it, and you'll always have your version. I think I'm on a version, this is version 1.2.1. I think there are about 7 different versions I've done of this so far. So it's just an easy way to keep anything you have done so far, because you never know. You may decide, well, I like the way it was better. Or if you're rebuilding like I am here and you want to keep the same footprint, you can keep that there for reference. Now, obviously, I'm not going for, it doesn't have to be in exactly the same position and so forth, because we're changing the flow of the ride a little bit, so it's going to be different. But I wanted to keep overall the same basic shape. So you see here that I've got the old version in blue, and the red and green version is what I'm working on right now, the new version. So overall, I can really say I 100% now feel this ride a whole lot better than I did before. I'm much more happy with it. I think it flows better. I think it's a better ride. And you'll see when we take a ride at the end, if you compare it to the previous video, it feels better, and it's a better ride. And it's also better to look at on screen. I know to ride it would be good because of the forces and so forth, but just to watch it on screen, it's more dynamic. There are a lot of times when you're going fast, but there's still something happening versus what we were seeing on the screen before, especially on some of the bigger airtime hills. You're going fast, but since you can't really feel the forces, it's just kind of dull to look at. So one thing I did decide to do here was to remove that sort of stall wave turn bunny hop thing up here. I decided to just have one of those in the coaster versus repeating it twice. So instead, I've got one of those twisty airtime hills that's certainly more known from Intamin and Mac than it is from B&M. I think they just did one, though, on one of the rides they did in China. I think it's a wing coaster. I can't remember. I don't think it's been open yet. I think it's at Wanda City, but I'm not 100% certain about that. Which, by the way, I would love to go to China. I really want to plan a trip there, just because of the culture, the architecture, so forth, and to ride some of these rides, these amazing rides that they've got building there. And I think I'm going to plan something like that. Maybe 2020, maybe. We'll see. I got to think about that. I'm not big on flying, and that's a long way to go for a trip because I'm on the east coast of the United States, so that's like a 24-hour trip. And the farthest I've gone so far is California, so we'll see about that. Maybe I better start with Europe first. But anyhow, to get back to what I was saying. Well, since I brought that up, let me tell you what's coming up on the channel. There are 3 things that I want to talk about. First is, obviously, we're doing the series. The second thing is that I'm going to start doing some ride reviews. because that's something I've always wanted to do, something I looked for a very long time. It seems to be much more popular now, but years ago, people didn't really do that kind of thing. They were more into footage, and I really want to do reviews and so forth. So I know plenty of people do them, but I have my own opinions, and I want to share them with everyone. So you can look forward to the first review coming up after this video. I'm releasing this on Thursday, so I think my first review will be on a Sunday. The first, aside from the Twisted Timbers one I did. I'm looking forward to that. So then also, what brought this up was, speaking of China, I decided to also start a new series and plan a coaster. So I'm going to have my first episode sometime soon coming up. This is going to be a Chinese themed small section of a park because, as I've said many times, I just don't have the patience to do an entire park at a high level of detail. So I've started working on some walls, some custom lanterns and so forth, and I'm going to do an archway entrance before, and I think all of that'll be in the first episode. So that will be coming up as well. That's a new series. The name of the park is Lucky Mountain or Happiness Hill. The actual Chinese name is Singfeng. Well, shoot, I forgot it. Singfeng Shan. I know quite a few people who speak Chinese, so they're giving me the characters and everything. I'm going to try to make custom signs and all that kind of thing, so that should be good. I'm really looking forward to that because I really am heavily influenced by Asian architecture and art. I really like the way it looks, so that's something that's coming up. And the third thing is coming up is some more trip plans I decided to make. I decided to go to Dorney Park on its opening weekend. Opening day is Friday, May 4th. If I have the date right. And so I'm going to go to that, and then I'm going to go to Knoebels the next day. So I will also have footage from that. And then, of course, the trips I've already talked about are a big trip in the end of May that will include Idlewild, Kennywood, Conneaut, Waldemere, Cedar Point, and Kings Island. So I'm going to have a lot of footage from that as well. So there's going to be a lot coming up on the channel. I've said it a few times. I just want to keep repeating it, so you be sure to stay tuned. So those are the three things I wanted to talk about. Now let's get back to this coaster. You can see one of the things I changed was that huge airtime hill. I made it 2 quick bunny hops because I like that better. It kept the feeling of speed much better, and it's also better to look at on the screen. And now what I'm doing is redoing that sort of backwards fury turn, I suppose we're going to call it. Now, in the last episode, I did this, and it was okay. The one problem I had with the way it rode was it was still going very fast at the top of the hill, so you didn't really get a chance to appreciate the sort of stall at the top when you're hanging at 90 degrees with airtime, which is a nice feature on Fury. So I decided to elongate this, make it a little bit higher, excuse me, make the negative G's a little bit less. I think before it was -2, and I took this down to about -1. -0.2 and -1. And I made the transition from 0 to 90 all the way from the start. At the bottom of the hill, you're at 0, and at the top, you're at 90. And before, it was transitioning about halfway up the hill. So I feel like it gives it a slightly more elegant ride. Hold on, I'm going to take a drink. It gives it a slightly more elegant feel as you go up there. It stalls a little bit more. I like that better. And then the onset of the positive G's is a little bit slower. So before, I noticed when it was riding, it felt like it kind of slammed into this section right here because it was going really fast. So I stretched that out a little bit. And overall, I'm much happier with the way this came out now. And I think it rides better. Certainly, I've ridden it from the front and back. And you'll get the chance to do that in just a minute, because as soon as I finish this complete layout, I'm going to show you the POV. And barring any comments from anyone telling me it's awful, we are going to then start on the actual theming in NoLimits 2. So the last few things I have to do here. Yes, cat. My cat's on me again, just like always. Actually, I have 2 cats. This is a different one on me this time. So the last things I have to do here is just kind of get this to snake back to the station. This portion right here is actually going to be where we meet the Siren. This is going to be a very rocky little island right here. I've got Flux's rock pack, which is excellent. He makes some really nice looking rocks, and I'm going to use that to make a rocky little island here, a little bit of vegetation. So for some tunnels, I'm going to use Best Danny's sound spear. I'm pretty sure it's Best Danny's. If not, I will certainly figure out whose it is before I do anything, so I can give that person credit, because I don't want to take credit for anybody else's work. I'm going to use that to create some sort of siren sound, which I will have to find somewhere. I don't know what I'm going to do about that, but we want definitely a sound of a siren, the song that the siren is actually singing that lures sailors to this island where they meet their doom. So that's going to come out really well. I'm looking forward to it. I definitely have a vision in my head for how that's going to look and how it's going to move through here, so I'm excited for that. I think this is going to end up being a pretty good project. At the beginning, man, I definitely had an idea how I wanted it to be, but the execution was not going well for me. The first few iterations of this ride, I just was not feeling, but I can definitely say this one I like a lot better. I think I did a lot better job on it. And once it is done, I think it's going to be one of my better projects that I've done. I'm really proud of the last one I did. I think I'm going to be proud of this one as well. But as always, if you have feedback or criticisms or any suggestions, be sure to give them to me, because I'm always glad to hear it. Although at this point, it's going to be a little bit difficult, because once you do stuff in FVD, you either have to start over or really kind of fool around with it. So, but I'm pretty happy with this, and I know that some of the feedback I got the last time was that it was smooth, and it's smoother now. So I think we'll be all right. And let's see. So what I'm going to add once we get this up and running in NoLimits 2, I have to decide on the colors. Right now I have a lime green color, which I like quite a lot. Actually, that's one of my favorite colors, which I think goes with the seaside location. And I actually made it rusted, because anything by the sea is likely to suffer rust very quickly. And it also kind of goes, I think, with the vibe of having like shipwrecks and seaweed everywhere and that kind of thing, just like ruin and decay. So I think that looks pretty good. So I've got to decide on the colors for the trains and all that sort of thing, but that'll come along. I'll do that when I just get the feeling for it. So making our way back to the station, you can see I'm coming back a little bit later or farther away from the station here. Before, I had a nice little dip up into the brake run, which I like that part of the ride. I was trying to emulate that with 2 dips this time. The one issue I had with it was it came out kind of bumpy. You'll see that in a minute. It's just like bump, 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 and then up into the brake run. And what it really reminded me of was an RMC ride, because they tend to do that a lot at the end. There's like these little hops of really extreme airtime. And I just didn't think it fit this very well. I wouldn't mind using that on a B&M coaster. I know it's not something that B&M would probably do, but I just didn't think it fit the overall flow of the ride very well. Because the whole rest of the ride tended to be sort of smooth and elements and so forth, and the ending was kind of bump, bump, bump. You can see right there, it's very sharp, the angles. So what I decided to do instead was just sort of put a slightly bank turn in between that small little bump right there in the middle. I just made into a slightly bank turn, which I felt was a little bit more B&M-ish, even though I'm not going for 100% B&M recreation. So I'm going to export this to NoLimits. You'll see the change version. I'm going to do a POV right now. So until then, I appreciate you watching. Thanks. Let me know if you have any feedback, and I will talk to you next time. Enjoy the ride.